welcome to the Newbery Center for Renaissance Studies Learning from Pre-Modern Plagues video series. This episode is entitled Surviving the Black Death, a Merchant's Journey Through a Medieval Pandemic. I'm Isabella Magni, currently postdoctoral associate at Rutgers University, but previously a member of the Center for Renaissance Studies. Our story today begins with this manuscript, a memorial book written by a wealthy merchant, Pepo degli Albizzi, in Florence between 1340 and 1380. The Albizzi were one of the wealthiest and most powerful families in medieval Florence. Their business mainly dealt with the production, refinement, and commerce of wool and wool products. In his book, partly ledger and partly diary, Pepo recorded his business affairs and some of his more personal life events like his 3 weddings, the birth of his children, and 2 of his wills. Among the stories that Pepo recounts in his book are his memories of the outbreak of the infamous Black Death. The Black Death was a pandemic that spread over large territories in Asia, Europe, and Africa. It started much earlier than what we are accustomed to think. We can now trace its origins back to the beginning of 13th century, but it reached its European peak in mid-14th century. The Black Death killed between 40 and 75% of the European population. Many more people, of course, also perished outside of Europe. In Florence, where Pepo was at the time, the peak of the contagion was reached probably in the summer of 1348, and around 2/3 of the city's population lost their lives. Many contemporaries wrote about the Black Death in literary texts and chronicles, among them famously Giovanni Boccaccio in his Decameron. Here is an illustration from a French manuscript depicting on the left side the visible lethal impact of the plague in Florence, and on the right side the 10 protagonists of the Decameron, 7 young women and 3 young men, fleeing the city to find refuge in the countryside. But let's go back to Pepo's manuscript, because what he recounts is an extraordinary first-hand account of the Black Death impact on his own family and his own work life. Towards the end of the book, in fact, Pepo writes a list of family members that died due to the mortalità, as he calls it, recording the date of their passing, their names, and their status in the family. Between June and July 1348, Pepo lost half of his immediate family, his father Antonio, his stepmother Giovanna, his nephew Giano, and 7 of his 13 siblings, 3 brothers, Giovanni, Filippo, and Jacopo, and 4 sisters, Paola, Schiata, Sandra, and Jacopa. Think about it, more than half of his siblings and both of his parents died within the span of 6 weeks or so. The mortalità not only impacted Pepo's personal life, as we just saw, but it also had evident effects on the family business, as he writes in pages like this one shown here. Pepo records, in fact, detailed accounts of the business pre and post 1348. Before the Black Death, Pepo's father, Antonio, ran the company. The year 1347 marked the peak of the business. After 1348, the business went through a reorganization due to Antonio's death. And even though Pepo and his brothers were able to maintain a prosperous business, their revenues never again reached the levels of 1347. Pepo's story comes from the past to demonstrate that when we talk about pandemics and plagues, we really have to consider how they impact people's lives at various levels, not just medical and personal, the 2 most obvious ones, but also social, economic, and much more. I want to leave you though on a positive note, because Pepo's story is also a story of overcoming a tragic personal and public event. After 1348, Pepo would go on to continue the family business, like we saw, and even to enlarge his own family. His first child, Alberto, was born in 1354, only a few years after the peak of the plague. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Learning from Pre-Modern Plagues. Stay tuned for future episodes that will be posted shortly. Until then, if you have any questions or comments, send them to us at renaissance@newbery.org. Stay well.